Okay, well, in part one I looked at some of the things about corporations being legal persons. So, as they are legally classed as people, they can be prosecuted for things. But this is where it starts getting quite interesting because, for example, it's not unheard of for there to be cases where a company is put on trial for corporate manslaughter, found guilty, and there's a sentence. But then it gets a bit strange because if you or I were charged with manslaughter, found guilty and sentenced, we would expect that we'd probably go to prison. Well, in the case of a corporation, the corporation doesn't go to prison. Maybe one or two people from the corporation, a manager, a director, people like that, might go to prison, but what about all the rest of the corporation? Surely if the corporation is a legal person, and the actual word corporation means body, so it's a body, punishing just one part of it is the equivalent of me being tried for manslaughter, found guilty, sentenced to prison, and turning round to the judge and saying, okay, here's what I'll do, I'll shave my beard off, you can put my beard in an envelope and lock it up for however many years the sentence is, and the rest of me can go on doing what I want, carrying on, living my life outside of the prison, because that's me, that's a part of me, it's as much a part of me as any other part, so that can do the sentence for me. When it's put like that, it starts to become apparent just how absurd a situation that is, how much it differs between the treatment of a corporation as a legal person and an individual as a legal person. So, there's something to think about there, isn't there? Okay, you thought it was getting fairly absurd, the things that I was pointing out and what I was saying. Well, the situation gets, with corporations being legal persons, gets even more absurd. Now, because each corporation is a legal person, this brings massive problems when they have competition, hostile takeovers, asset stripping, driving a competitor out of business, those kind of things, because they have to recognise that the company that they're doing that to is also a legal person. So it should count the same as, similar behaviour between individuals, people. So if a company goes and beats down its rival and takes what they've got and sells it, that should be the same as if somebody in the street goes and beats down somebody and takes what they've got and sells it. Because as far as the law is concerned, they're all persons, so there should be no difference. And then when we come to the idea of the whole basic idea of capitalist competition, market forces, survival of the fittest type stuff, what happens there? If a business, a corporation, decides that to get the most profit it's going to take on its competitors, undercut them, drive those out of business so they no longer exist, are no longer able to compete with it, then that's the equivalent of somebody, a normal person, going and deciding that, that person over there is chatting to the girl that they fancy, so they'll go over and stab them or shoot them, or that person might get the job instead of me, so they'll get the money, so I'll kill them. But most people have a sort of natural reluctance to act like that. I don't like the idea there's something that, some sort of moral guideline, conscience or whatever, that restrains them. But this doesn't seem to happen with corporations, so either the corporations themselves don't really believe that corporations are people, or should be treated as people, or the kind of people they are extremely unpleasant, basically totally dangerous psychopaths who should be locked up for the safety of everybody else. So, as I see it, the conclusion is that corporations don't actually really think of corporations as being people, and therefore, no more than a goldfish thinks of itself as being a person. So maybe they shouldn't be regarded as such. I mean, if they themselves don't identify themselves as people, don't act as people, then on what basis does the law say they should be regarded and treated as people? Yeah, there's quite a bit there. There's a lot that I could have gone into in a lot more depth, other illustrations and things, but it just shows how absurd things can get when somebody decides something that isn't actually the case and says that it is. For example, that corporations are people. I've shown that although the law claims that that's the case, it doesn't treat them as people. They don't treat themselves as people either. So, it's something to think about, hopefully.